Hey everybody, welcome. Listen, before we jump into the lesson, I just want to say thank you for all the support. If you find these videos useful, definitely consider subscribing. I've got a lot of content coming out just like this, and you don't want to miss it. Hit the bell. That's all I got to say. Let's get into the lesson. All right, so here we are in Hack the Box. Now we're working with SQL, so this one right here. Now, if we expand it, we can see the tags, vulnerability assessment, databases, MySQL, SQL, reconnaissance, and weak credentials. Now, I will tell you guys, if you're new to Hack the Box, this is just using these tags alone can be really helpful and kind of point you in the right direction without going through a full walkthrough. But the more experience you get, to be honest, when I see them, I actually skip past them as much as I can because sometimes they can be a little bit of a spoiler. Let's go ahead and spin up the machine. Now, while that's spinning up, the interesting thing we know right off the bat is it's a Linux VM. It's called SQL. Interesting naming for sure, because the last machine was a SQL injection machine, or a Linux machine that we use SQL injection on. So the naming there is highly suspect. So we want to keep that in mind for sure. And that's not cheating, because we're using all of the available information that we have to us, which is the same whether it's a capture the flag or a pen testing engagement. We have that information. It's handy. Let's use it, obviously within the scope of what we're allowed to do. All right, so our machine finished spinning up. Let's go ahead and grab that IP. And let's head over to Pwnbox. Again, if you're running a Kali VM or something like that with OpenVPN to access Hack the Box, you can go ahead and do that here. If you're not doing any of that, you can just follow along and learn some stuff. That's cool too. All right, so let's run our nmap scan. So we're going to do nmap-v for verbose. We're going to do sc to run the scripts. And we'll do -n. That's just one of my habits that just disables DNS resolution. And then we'll go ahead and paste in our IP. And I think that looks good. So let's run that. All right, so we see right off the bat, discovered open port 3306, which is MySQL. So we didn't run SV, which will show us the version. I would definitely recommend running that. So maybe while it's running that script, we'll throw open another one here just to demonstrate this. So we'll do nmap-v. I just want to know the service version. So we'll do SV. For P, we'll specify port. That's 3306. And we'll put in the IP again. So we're just going to scan that single port. Let's run that. And we should get a result pretty quickly. And by the way, if you guys have noticed all of my videos, I always do -n. Let me scroll back up here. Let's see, right here. Oops. So I always specify -n in my nmap scan. What this does is disables this right here. So it'll try to resolve the IP address of that host to a DNS name, to an FQDN, or essentially just a DNS name, some kind of record. So that's what I'm disabling. I didn't do that in this one, but I just wanted to point that out. So while that's running the version detection, let's scroll down on our left scan where we did the scripts, because we got the same thing ultimately. So we saw that port 3306 is open. We see we have MySQL here, version 5.5. Okay, so we got a little bit of information here that could be useful. So that's really helpful on its own. To be honest, we don't really need to wait on this, but I guess we'll leave it running anyway. So what I would say from this point on, right? So we only have 3306 open. We didn't see any other ports. So I do know from even prior to getting into cybersecurity, just setting up MySQL for my various projects and that kind of thing. I know that the default password is blank oftentimes, or at least it was. Also, the default username is root. So that's good to know. There's also, I know that you can connect to a MySQL instance remotely with the MySQL command. So I think that's worth starting with, because we don't really have anything else here. And I mean, the box is called SQL. We have a port open. Let's go for it. So I'm actually going to cancel. I'm not sure why this version detection is taking so long. I've run it many times before, not on this box, but it's usually pretty quick. So either way, let's go ahead and clear that. Just clean up our screen a bit. Let's see, where is the IP address? So let's go ahead and copy that. All right, so what we're going to do, let's clear this too. We're going to use the MySQL command. So if you're not familiar with it, if you do MySQL -- help, there's a lot of results here. Let's scroll all the way up here, see what we can find that is useful. Okay, so we have MySQL, then it wants the options, then the database. Let's go through this. So again, I've used this outside of the context of pen testing. So the one I usually use, let's find it, -h, lowercase h for host name. So that's how we're going to specify that we want to connect to a MySQL server over there, somewhere else, not here, because we could run this locally. We could have MySQL running on this box, obviously. So we definitely want to specify -h. We also want to specify username, which should be -u, lowercase u right here, username. So we'll want to specify that. And you'll see here it says user for login if not current user. So it will try to use the username that I have currently, which in this case is this one right here. So we definitely want to specify a username. I'm going to specify root, like I said. That's the default for MySQL. Let's see. Let's go through. We should also have a -p. I didn't see. I probably went past it, but yeah, we should have a -p for password right here. It says if password is not given, it's asked from the TTY. So yeah, we'll specify that. And that's something I've always done anyway with this command. So we'll do MySQL -h for the host name. We'll paste in that IP. We'll specify -u for username. We'll say root. And then if we specify -p, it says if we don't give it a password, it'll ask for one. So I'll just do that. And when it asks for password, I'm just going to hit enter. So that's just a blank password ultimately. And it looks like it's spinning. Let's give it a minute. All right, and it looks like we're in. That took a little bit. Probably took like, I don't know, 15 seconds or so. I sped up the video probably just so you didn't have to wait through it. But yeah, it took a little bit longer than I expected. Maybe there's something going on with the lab environment since that other scan took forever too. So let's close that out, buy us a little bit more real estate here. All right, so we see MariaDB none. So we haven't selected a database. But MariaDB, just so you know, follows kind of the convention of MySQL. So it shows up as MySQL. So again, I'm no database expert, but generally speaking, things that I do in MySQL, just plain MySQL, work in MariaDB all the same. So in this case, let's do, you can do show databases, and then most SQL commands you want to end in a semicolon. So I haven't really run into ones that I didn't, but yeah, I'm sure someone that knows SQL better than me will comment in the section below and let us know. So if you do show databases, this will show current databases. We have 4 here on this system. We'll just start at the top. The 2 that are interesting to me are probably just MySQL and Hack the Box, but definitely Hack the Box is interesting. I believe both of these are just defaults. So we're not really too worried about those for right now. Now, to get into those databases and actually view data there, you need to use the use command. So you'll say use, then you specify the database name and specify a semicolon at the end, or enter a semicolon at the end. So we'll say use HTB for Hack the Box semicolon. Now, when we enter that, we see it says database changed. Oops. And then now it says HTB right here. So this is where the database name will go, just to show you kind of what context you're working inside of. All right, so with SQL, we have databases. Then the next level down, we have tables. So we have a table of data. If you've worked in Microsoft Excel, think about it like a worksheet kind of, or a sheet, I guess. Isn't that the same thing? I don't know. Now I'm questioning everything I ever knew about Excel. Anyway, so the point is, let's do show tables, semicolon. And we have 2 tables here, config and users. Let's take a look at users. I'm just curious. Now, this is a little tricky. The way that we view data there is we'll execute a SQL query. So this is something that I pulled up W3 schools. If we give me 1 second, let me pull that up. All right, so W3 schools, I have it pulled up here. This is actually an article I referenced in the last video, but if you scroll up this section, they have a whole section on SQL databases. So, for example, they'll talk about SQL syntax, the select, where. Those are all very very key kind of keywords within working in SQL. So you definitely should be familiar with some of those. You don't necessarily need to go really in the weeds unless you really want to. But I would definitely recommend going through some of their SQL lessons to get more familiar with the syntax. But in our case, all we need is select. So that's how we're going to select some kind of data to view. Then we'll specify an asterisk, which means everything. So we'll say select everything from, and then we specify the table that we want to select data from. So this kind of just dumps the data from that table. So in our case, I'm going to do users, semicolon, and we see we get a list of usernames right here. So that's great. So again, these are usernames in the database itself. Keep in mind, we logged into SQL as root. That was the root account for SQL, but this is the data inside of that database. So that's why we don't see a root account here. Either way, these are very valuable though, right? We have a whole list of usernames. From there though, let's go ahead and continue on that. I'll up arrow. This time, instead of users, we'll do config, and we'll do a semicolon. And bingo, we see that number 5 right here, the ID is flag, and we have a handy dandy flag right here. So that's the box. We got the data we needed. I will say I actually really like this box because if you're new to SQL, it forces you to run some new commands you've never run before. And I can't recommend it strongly enough. The best thing you could do is just spin up a Linux VM. It'll take you an hour tops. Spin up a Linux VM, install SQL, maybe download some sample data, learn how to import into SQL, do things like that. Play with the technology, because I promise you, a lot of people think it's all about knowing the tools and knowing the certain commands, and that is a big part of it. But a really big part of it is understanding the underlying technology. I would bet you a SQL admin that got access to a SQL server would probably do a lot more damage than me, for example, knowing just a few basic commands. I hope you found it useful. This was a pretty fun box. We got a lot more to go. They're definitely increasing in difficulty, and I don't want to spoil anything, but as we get through the middle and end of tier 1, they're going to step up quite a bit in terms of difficulty. So that said, I'll see you in the next video. Assuming you're going to subscribe on your way out. You don't have to, no pressure. But if you want to, then I'm just saying we could be best friends someday. So, you know, that's out there. Not best friends. We could talk. No. That would, well, maybe. I mean, I like talking to people. I don't know. That just got weird. Sorry.